The movie begins by introducing a village setting, where we find a woman named Danny, who is busy repairing her old house. Her husband, Ted, is a psychiatrist, and they live in a house located in a place with poor network coverage. Danny has been working hard to fix the house for days, as it is quite old. Eventually, she finds a spot with good network reception and calls Ted to pass the time, as she feels bored. Ted, due to work, has to stay at the hospital that day, leaving Danny to spend the night alone. She sets up a tent by the door to sleep in. Later, a stranger appears at the door, peeking through the window. He warns Danny that her life is in danger, claiming someone has entered her house with the intent to kill her. He urges her to open the door for her safety. Although Danny is frightened, she hesitates to trust the stranger. Despite his gentle and caring tone, which makes him seem genuinely concerned about her, she refuses to open the door. He insists that she call the police if she doesn't believe him, as her life is in serious danger. The scene shifts, and we later discover that the man's warning was not a lie, as Danny has been killed. Her body is found, confirming the danger was real. A few months later, we see Ted visiting a shop that deals in antiques and rare items. The shop is owned by Darcy, Danny's twin sister, who has been blind since childhood but possesses unique psychic abilities. Darcy can sense paranormal activities, like ghosts and magical forces. Darcy is deeply affected by the death of her sister Danny. Ted often visits her, though he is skeptical of her claims about paranormal occurrences. On one visit, Darcy holds a bell and tells Ted that it is linked to the life of a boy whose life was tragically taken. She claims she can feel his presence through the bell. Ted had come to deliver something Darcy had requested, a handkerchief connected to the mysterious patient with the fake eye. Darcy uses this object to uncover more information about Danny's death and the man who killed her. Through her abilities, Darcy learns that Ted has started a new relationship with another woman, despite Danny's recent death. Though Darcy is hurt by this, she hides her feelings. Ted confides in Darcy, explaining that his new fiancée was a friend from the past who now works at their hospital. As Ted leaves, we realize that the reason he stayed at the hospital that night, leaving Danny alone, was not because of work but due to his affair, showing his betrayal. In the evening, Darcy arrives at her house, bringing with her the handkerchief from the mysterious patient with the fake eye. She places the handkerchief on the table, carefully places something inside it, and removes her gloves. As she touches the contents, a shocking vision overwhelms her. Fear grips her, and tears well up in her eyes. Terrified by what she sees, Darcy rushes to a storeroom, where she keeps a large wooden box. She inspects it carefully before sitting next to it, surrounded by strange objects that seem to be connected to someone who, according to Darcy, is no longer alive. Meanwhile, Ted wakes up, preparing to leave for the hospital. Before he can leave, his friend stops him and starts showing him photos from a camera. The camera, which once belonged to Danny, was set up to take pictures automatically. One picture in particular catches their attention. It's a shadow of Danny, even though it's been a long time since her death. Ted dismisses it, but his friend finds it unsettling. Later that night, Ted heads to work, leaving his friend alone in the house where Danny passed away. She is understandably scared, but Ted reassures her that it's just a matter of a few more days until his shift changes. His friend insists that until then, she'll stay in her own home, and Ted agrees. Before Ted leaves, his friend tells him about a strange gift sent by Darcy, a large wooden box. Both Ted and his friend are puzzled, but they are even more surprised when they discover Darcy standing outside the house. She had arrived uninvited, intending to stay for 2 days. Although Ted's friend is reluctant, Ted cannot turn her away. Darcy brings the wooden box inside and reveals its contents, a large wooden statue. His friend feels uneasy upon seeing it, but Ted explains that once Darcy leaves, he'll remove the statue. He asks his friend to bear with Darcy for the time being. Ted leaves for work, and not long after, his friend prepares to leave the house as well. However, she finds that her keys are missing. She searches frantically but can't find them anywhere. Meanwhile, Darcy sits calmly, almost as if she already knew what was about to happen. As the search for the keys continues, Darcy casually asks if she isn't going to leave now. With no other option, Ted's friend agrees to stay in the house. After some time, Ted's friend returns to find the large wooden statue from the box sitting ominously on the dining table. Ted's friend feels a sense of unease when she notices the large wooden statue on the dining table. She turns to Darcy and asks if she moved it, but Darcy denies it, offering no further explanation. This response only adds to Ted's friend's confusion. After a moment of contemplation, she brushes it off and decides to bring food for Darcy. They sit down and chat, and Ted's friend inquires about Darcy's work. Darcy's answer makes Ted's friend quietly mock her in her mind, as she believes Darcy holds superstitions about witchcraft. Their conversation takes a turn when Darcy asks how Ted's friend feels about the house. Ted's friend admits that she doesn't feel comfortable, especially after the events surrounding Danny's death. Darcy then asks an intriguing question. If a stranger asked you to open the door, would you? Ted's friend answers firmly, no, because I'm not that foolish. This response seems to anger Darcy, who defends her late sister, saying Danny was not a fool and chose not to open the door. Darcy insists that it wasn't the patient with the fake eye who killed Danny, but someone else entirely. Ted's friend, now more intrigued and unsettled, asks who could have killed Danny if it wasn't the man with the fake eye. Darcy reveals that the killer was a male nurse who works at the same hospital as Ted. This revelation shocks Ted's friend. The scene then flashes back to that fateful night, where it is confirmed that Danny did indeed refuse to open the door, and the man with the fake eye was there to help. However, as he warned, someone else had entered the house, a man wearing a mask, who mercilessly murdered Danny. Later, Ted's friend calls Ted to tell him how strange Darcy is, recounting how Darcy claimed that Danny wasn't killed by the man with the fake eye, but by a nurse from a hospital. Ted's friend confides that she feels uncomfortable around Darcy, especially since the car keys have gone missing, and she suspects Darcy might have hidden them. Ted tries to calm her down, advising her to lock her door and try to sleep. Though she goes to her room, sleep eludes her. She sneaks downstairs and finds Darcy asleep on the sofa. Quietly, Ted's friend approaches the wooden statue, hoping to uncover some hidden secret. She inspects the statue and finds 5 holes in its head. To her shock, she discovers a picture of Danny, Darcy's photo, a tooth, and a small vial of blood hidden inside. Just as she begins to process what she's found, Darcy's eyes snap open, and in an angry tone, she demands that Ted's friend put everything back where it belongs. Ted's friend obeys, returning the items to the statue's head. After Darcy leaves, she spends the night sitting in front of the statue, but Ted's friend is left feeling increasingly frightened and unsettled by the mysterious events unfolding around her. To pass the time, Ted's friend begins watching videos on Danny's old camera, hoping to distract herself. However, she is soon startled by a terrifying face that appears behind Danny in one of the recordings. So shaken, she drops the camera in fright, only to look up and see Danny's ghost standing in a corner of the room. The sight sends a chill through her, but in the midst of her panic, she discovers her missing keys. She quickly grabs them, takes the car, and leaves the house, desperate to get away. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Ted is seen conversing with Danny's killer, the nurse. The two share a close relationship, and it becomes clear that they have been working together. Back at Ted's house, he arrives to find his friend gone and Darcy sitting alone at the table. When Ted asks where his friend is, Darcy coldly replies that she ran away. She claims she wanted Ted's friend to see his true nature and that his deceit was exposed. Darcy accuses Ted of being the one who killed her sister, revealing that Ted only cared about her wealth, and the nurse was merely following his orders. She explains that she once thought a madman killed Danny, but she now realizes the real killer was the man she once trusted. Darcy further asserts that Ted will likely send someone to kill her next, but she challenges him to send the nurse instead. Ted, taken aback, tries to defend himself, suggesting they visit the detective investigating Danny's case. Darcy remains unconvinced. In an attempt to prove his innocence, Ted gives Darcy his phone, promising that the detective will call her. He leaves, and the scene flashes back to the past. In this flashback, we see Ted and the nurse scheming to kill Danny. Ted's true intentions are revealed. He fell in love with his friend, wanting Danny's wealth, not her love. The nurse, who enjoyed killing, was all too eager to follow Ted's orders. Despite the nurse's dark tendencies, the man with the fake eye, who was mentally unstable, wasn't a murderer. He had gone to save Danny that night but was unable to convince her to open the door, leading to her tragic death. Darcy, believing the man to be a threat, killed him in retaliation. We then see Ted's twisted plan to eliminate Darcy as well. Before leaving, he removes a tile from the floor, planning for her to fall when she tries to pick up his phone. The nurse is also tasked with ensuring Darcy's death. When Darcy answers the phone, she falls, just as Ted planned. The nurse arrives and, seeing Darcy's injuries, looks at the wooden statue nearby. He notices her fatal head wound, and despite her blood loss, she dies. However, Darcy's death sets in motion something much darker. Having been deeply invested in ritual magic, Darcy's death completes a ritual, one that she had foreseen. She did not try to save herself because she knew her death was part of the plan. As soon as she dies, the wooden statue comes to life, following the nurse and attacking him. The nurse manages to escape, but not for long. He suddenly collapses and wakes up to find himself tied to a hospital bed, with Ted standing before him. Ted accuses the nurse of causing Darcy's death, and the nurse, terrified, begs for his life, promising to stay silent. Ted, however, is not swayed. He refuses to let the nurse go, knowing that doing so would make him a suspect. He coldly tells the nurse that keeping him alive is the only way he can ensure that no one will ever suspect him, leaving the nurse trapped and at Ted's mercy. Ted, ever the manipulator, dismisses the nurse's pleas, knowing full well that no one would believe such an outrageous story about a wooden puppet coming to life and attacking him. This is a clear reflection of Ted's true nature: selfish, deceitful, and adept at using people to his advantage. He has cleverly played everyone around him, including his own wife, in his pursuit of power and wealth. Meanwhile, Darcy, driven by a deep thirst for revenge, is not content with merely killing the nurse. She wants him to suffer, much like how he caused the death of her sister Dani and tortured many others during his time as a nurse. Darcy's wrath knows no bounds, and she is determined to make the nurse feel every ounce of the pain he inflicted on others. But then, a surprising twist unfolds when a patient, seeking their own revenge, comes after the nurse and bites his finger, leaving him in agony. This act of vengeance only deepens the nurse's suffering, as he becomes the target of those he wronged. Back at his home, Ted is visibly shaken, his mind racing. He comes across the same bell that Darcy had once told him about, the bell that was connected to a boy's soul. Ted, skeptical of the supernatural, rings it, hoping to summon the spirit. But when nothing happens, he begins to doubt the existence of anything beyond the physical world. To him, Darcy's claims seem nothing more than a clever ruse. Meanwhile, Ted's friend, who had once been by his side, has now left him. In a strange twist, Darcy's revenge against Ted for her sister's death is now complete. His life has been reduced to shambles, and all that remains for him is to face the consequences of his actions. Just as Ted begins to believe he's free from the clutches of the supernatural, a shocking turn of events occurs. The soul of the boy tied to the bell materializes and stands before Ted, signaling that his time is up. The bell, which Darcy had used as a tool of her revenge, has now come full circle, and Ted's fate is sealed. The story concludes with the tragic realization that Ted, too, is doomed to face the same grim fate that he so ruthlessly dealt to others. And so, the story ends, leaving behind a haunting message of guilt, revenge, and the inevitable consequences of betrayal. With this, the movie ends. If you liked this video, then do not forget to subscribe to the channel after liking the video.